In my 37-year career in law enforcement, I have never, ever heard of anything so horrific.
That's the sheriff, 36 years on the job. He's stood in front of cameras before, hard cases, bad news. He's done this more times than he can count. This time, he couldn't finish his sentence. 5 days before this moment, he told a town that a 4-year-old girl was gone. That was already the worst thing he'd ever had to say out loud. Then, on July 9th, he had to come back and say something worse than that. They found her. Not all of her. Just enough. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what that sentence means, and why it's the reason this case just changed completely. Before we go any further, drop the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this one's traveled. And if you've already watched 3 or 4 videos on this case, stay anyway. What came out yesterday changes the timeline everyone thought they understood. Before the warrants, before the search boats, before any of the words you're about to hear, here's who she actually was. Javeayah Harris was 4 years old. She lived on Hillsborough Street in Aiken, South Carolina. Her mother was there, her father was there, and soon there was supposed to be a new baby in that house too. Her mum was 39 weeks pregnant the week Javea disappeared, days away from having another child. People who knew her say she didn't talk like a typical 4-year-old. She held full conversations, complete sentences. Her family described her as sharp, even before anyone had thought to get her properly tested for anything. She liked being outside. Neighbors say she spent a lot of her time near the family's chicken coop, watching the birds, playing close to the dog. Small stuff, ordinary stuff, the kind of detail that only matters later, once you know what comes next. Hold on to that. We'll come back to it. Here's the first thing about this case that doesn't add up, and I'm not going to explain it yet, because it isn't time. The last confirmed moment anyone outside her immediate family saw Javeayah alive was weeks before her mother ever picked up a phone and called 911. Not days, weeks. Sit with that for a second, because most missing child cases don't start that way. Usually, someone reports a child missing close to when they were actually last seen. That's not what happened here. And that gap, that stretch of time nobody can account for, is the quiet detail sitting underneath this entire story. For now, just know this. Javeayah wasn't a headline. She wasn't a case number. She was a little girl with braided hair and pink beads, who liked watching chickens, who could hold a full conversation with adults, and who should still be 4 years old right now, this week, today. She isn't, and that's the only fact in this story that actually matters. Here's what was actually said, in order, starting with the call that started all of this. On June 30th, just before 9 p.m., Javeayah's mother, Michilae, called 911. Her voice on that call is calm at first, almost too calm, some people online have said. She told the dispatcher her daughter had been playing outside. She said she went inside to cook dinner. She said when she came back out, no more than 20 or 30 minutes later, Javeayah was gone.
I can't find my baby. She was outside playing, and I came out here after cooking dinner a little bit, and I'm looking for her, but I don't see her nowhere.
On that call, she described exactly what Javeayah was wearing. Pink Minnie Mouse pajamas, Crocs, braided hair with pink beads tied in. She mentioned that Javeayah might have autism, though she admitted there was no formal diagnosis yet. She told the dispatcher she was 39 weeks pregnant and that she couldn't keep up with her daughter the way she normally would. That single call is the reason an entire search machine turned on. Within a day, it wasn't just local deputies walking a backyard. The FBI got involved, state police got involved, search dogs came in, volunteers showed up by the dozens, then the hundreds. A whole community walked fields and tree lines, looking for a 4-year-old in pink pajamas. People asked, almost immediately, why there wasn't an Amber Alert. The sheriff's office gave an answer at the time. They said they couldn't risk an untrained volunteer missing a clue, or accidentally destroying evidence, or getting hurt themselves in an unfamiliar search area. That answer didn't sit well with a lot of people. Honestly, it still might not sit well with you. Here's the part that's hard to say plainly, so let me slow down and say it exactly how it happened. Nothing about that search added up the way a real missing child search usually does. No sightings. No tips that led anywhere. No trace of her at all. 4 straight days of searching, and nothing. And then, on the 5th day, everything changed. Not because they found her, because the sheriff stopped searching for a missing girl. And he started searching for a body. If you're the kind of person who needs to see a story like this through to the actual truth, not just the headline version, subscribe now. Because what happens in the next chapter is the part almost nobody online has explained correctly. On July 4th, Sheriff Marty Sawyer stood in front of cameras and said something no parent in that town wanted to hear, and something no parent anywhere wants to imagine hearing. He said the investigation and the evidence collected so far led his office to believe Javeayah was no longer alive. He called it the hardest announcement of his entire 37-year career, not one of the hardest, the hardest. Then he said the next part, slowly, like it cost him something to say it. Both of Javeayah's parents, her mother Michilae Herring and her father Javeayah Harris, were under arrest. Not for a missing child, for homicide by child abuse. Michilae Herring was also charged with filing a false police report. That second charge matters more than it might seem at first. It means investigators don't just suspect something was off. It means they believe the story she gave on that 911 call, the version about Javeayah wandering off while dinner was cooking, simply wasn't true. Both parents were denied bond, and investigators said something that reframed the entire case in one sentence. They believed Javeayah had already been dead for about a month by the time anyone reported her missing. Replay that again if you need to. A month. That means June 30th, the night of that 911 call, wasn't the beginning of this story at all. It was something else. A much later chapter, made to look like the first one. I want to be careful here, because this is exactly where a lot of channels start guessing, filling gaps with theories. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to tell you only what's confirmed, and stop exactly where the confirmed facts stop. What police haven't said, not yet, not in any real detail, is what actually happened during that missing month, the weeks before the call. That part is still locked inside 2 people who have, so far, only confessed to investigators behind closed doors, not to the public, not to her family, not yet. This is where I slow everything down and separate fact from noise, because by this point in the story, a lot of pages online are filling blanks with guesses dressed up as updates. I'm not going to be one of them. Here's what's actually confirmed, by the people running this investigation, and nobody else. The arrest warrants state that both parents showed what investigators called extreme indifference to human life. That's the exact legal language used in the documents. In plain terms, it means investigators believe both parents failed to get medical help for Javeayah after she'd already been hurt. The warrants also confirm both parents have confessed to investigators. Search efforts eventually moved out of Aiken County entirely, into Fairfield County, about 2 hours north, near a place called Cedar Creek. Locals call that same stretch of water Stumpy Pond because of the dead trees still standing out of it. Investigators haven't fully explained why searchers were sent to that specific location. They've only said it became what they call an area of interest. That's it. That's the entire confirmed picture as of this video. Anything more specific than that, anything about exactly what happened inside that house during that missing month, hasn't been made public by anyone with the authority to confirm it. I want to say that as plainly as I can, because a case like this pulls people toward filling in the blanks themselves. I'm not going to do that for you. When police confirm more, I'll bring it to you. Until then, this is exactly where the confirmed story stops, and where speculation would begin. While both parents sat in custody, the search itself didn't end. It just changed shape completely. Search boats went out onto the water near Cedar Creek. State agencies sent in a helicopter. Roads leading into the area were blocked off entirely. For days, all anyone in that community could really do was stand back and watch law enforcement vehicles come and go from a place most of them had never had a reason to think about before. A place they now just call Stumpy Pond. On July 6th, investigators revealed that Michilae Herring had told them she disposed of Javeayah's body somewhere else entirely, a location authorities chose not to release to the public right away.
Wish that we had this, before now, where she would have lived her sweet life as a child should, with so much love and so much care. We'll never forget her. Never. She's our baby. She all the...
1 week after that first 9/11 call, the same church that had sheltered volunteer searchers during the hunt for Javeayah opened its doors again, not to organize another search this time, just to gather, just to sit together with what most of the town already suspected, even before it was ever officially confirmed. That's the part of this story most headlines skip right past. A whole community walked fields for a missing 4-year-old, side by side, hoping, and then they had to quietly absorb the fact that she was never really missing in the way they'd been told. She'd already been gone, long before anyone started looking. The search for her body stayed active through all of this, and what investigators found next is the update almost nobody covering this case has fully explained yet. This is the part that changes the entire shape of this case, and it only happened yesterday. On July 9th, Sheriff Sawyer stood in front of cameras again. This press conference wasn't like the last one. Last time, he had to announce an arrest. This time, he had something else entirely to confirm. Investigators had found human remains. The location was Cedar Creek Reservoir in Fairfield County, the same general area locals call Stumpy Pond. The remains were sent for DNA testing right away. The results came back fast. They were consistent with being the biological child of Michilae Herring and Johmarea Harris. In plain terms, they'd found Javeayah. The sheriff didn't hide how hard this hit him, even on camera, even with everyone watching. He said this has been the most emotionally difficult case his office has ever worked, in 36 years. He said there were harsh things he personally wanted to say about what her parents did. He chose not to say them out loud. Given everything else he'd already confirmed, he didn't really need to. Here's the next part, and I want to walk through it carefully, not to shock you, but so you understand exactly why this update landed the way it did. Investigators believe the parents used chemicals to destroy and conceal Javeayah's remains before they ended up in that water. That's as far as I'm willing to go with that detail, because anything more specific isn't something you need to carry with you after this video ends, and it's not something her family needs to see repeated over and over for views. What matters most is this. Because of what investigators now believe happened, new charges were added on top of the original ones. Destruction and desecration of human remains. Both parents now face that charge, layered onto the homicide by child abuse charges they were already sitting with in a jail cell. Let that sit for a second. This case didn't end with an arrest. The arrest was only the point where it turned into something even harder to sit with. Here's the line from that press conference I think you genuinely need to hear, close to exactly how the sheriff said it. He said, "It's unlikely all of Javeayah's remains will ever be recovered." Read that again if you need to. I did, more than once. That means this case may never end the way most true crime cases eventually do. There's no guaranteed clean moment coming, where everything gets found, everything gets fully explained, and everyone involved gets to move on. Even after a trial, even after a verdict, whenever that comes, part of this may simply stay unfinished, permanently. That's not something you hear in most cases, and it's not something I'm going to rush past because I don't think it deserves to be rushed past. So where does that leave the actual timeline now? Here's what we know for certain, as of today. Javeayah had already been gone for about a month before her mother ever picked up the phone to call 911. That call was never the beginning of this story. It was something else entirely, a call made weeks after the truth had already happened, quietly, inside that house. And now we understand part of why the first search never found anything. Searchers were combing fields and tree lines near her home, looking for a missing child who might still be nearby. But by the time that search had even started, she was already somewhere else, somewhere nobody was looking yet. Here's what the sheriff still hasn't said, even now. He was asked, directly, for more detail. He declined to give it. He didn't explain exactly how far back this goes. He didn't explain what happened during that missing month, or what led up to it in the first place. Those answers already exist. Somewhere, in an interview room, two people already told investigators the truth. The public simply doesn't have it yet. When that comes out, and it likely will, maybe at a future bond hearing, maybe in a court filing down the line, I'll be the one bringing it to you straight. Not the version wrapped in guesses and screenshots. The version that's actually confirmed. Now, where does this actually stand, right now, as of this video? Both parents remain in custody, denied bond. They're facing homicide by child abuse charges, plus the newer charges tied directly to how Javeayah's remains were handled after her death. Michilae Herring is also facing a false police report charge tied to that original 911 call. The investigation is still active. SLED and multiple other state agencies remain involved in it. If you have any information connected to this case, the tip line is open and it's completely anonymous. I'll leave that number in the description below. I want to end this the same way I started it, not with the sheriff, not with the charges, with her. Javeayah Harris was 4 years old. She liked watching chickens. She could hold a full, real conversation with the adults around her. She should have had an entire life still stretched out in front of her, and she doesn't. 3 quick things before you go. 1. Comment the city you're watching from. I genuinely read every single one. 2. If this case gets another update, and it likely will, I want you hearing it here first, so subscribe now, before you close this tab. 3. If you know someone else who's been following this story closely, send them this video instead of the loudest one out there. Send them the accurate one. I'll see you in the next one.